You want to take it from the top?
Yeah, let's try it.
He will rock you. The heat will roll you. Baby, don't you know my heat will move your soul. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Love me today. Love me tomorrow. All day, all night, you feel my heat. Feel, 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 feel my heat.
I think we should repeat that again.
Feel, 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 feel. Feel my heat. Feel my heat. Yeah, it's definitely cool. Let's lay it down.
Hey, it's Doing It with Mike Sachs and Rob. Mike's the brains, I'm the brawn, and together we make this podcast. On today's episode, Mike speaks with Paul Major, the subject of the new book, Feel the Music, The Psychedelic Worlds of Paul Major. Before that interview, though, did you know that Mike's latest book, Stinker Lets Loose, has been turned into an audiobook starring John Hamm, Ray Seahorn, Jessica McKenna, Paul F. Tompkins, Andy Richter, Philip Baker Hall, Andy Daly, and more? Yeah, check out this clip.
You're probably wondering why I called you here.
Had some curiosity.
Here's the situation. I need you to personally deliver a 6-pack of Schlitz to the President of the United States.
Here we go again.
And we're off!
In 1977, a new hero hit the silver screen.
I'm a fixer. A deep-fried fixer who don't ask no questions.
And his name?
This here be the Stinker, your #1 beaver cleaver. Come back.
Now, on the 40th anniversary of his legendary exploits, Stinker Lets Loose.
Stinker lets loose. Stinker lets loose.
Presented by Audible Comedy, starring John Hamm as Stinker.
I may be a backwoods Billy Bobble-Dobble, but I ain't stupid.
Ray Seahorn as Gwyneth.
Never fell in love with a raccoon before.
Andy Daly as Boner.
Time to get this wiggle wagon a wangin'.
John DiMaggio as Jumbo.
Ooh, worms in a peach basket.
Paul F. Tompkins as Mr. Walsh.
A roller skating rink. Can you believe that? With disco music.
With James Urbaniak as President Jimmy Carter.
Did this ever happen to Lincoln?
Guest starring Andy Richter as Orville Max.
Bang, bang, prepare to die.
And Philip Baker Hall as the Big Man.
That's why I'm paying you the big bucks.
Discovered by best-selling author Mike Sachs and directed for audio by Eric Martin, they now invite you to strap yourself into this fully amped, revved-up mean machine.
$60,000? That's a tremendous a lot.
If you lose, rascal. Rascal never find mate for loving.
When Stinker lets loose. Stinker lets loose.
Will big government and the Smokies bring him down?
My name is John Aura Sledge. That is Sheriff John Aura Sledge.
You got that right, Daddy.
Don't let patrol always repossessing my dreams.
Or will Stinker let loose?
Looks like we're about to play ball.
We are going to die! Stinky Story Harry Hole.
Just another day at the office.
What's so funny, son?
Pre-order Stinker Lets Loose right now. and then start listening on January 9th, exclusively on Audible.
You can pre-order your copy at adbl.co/stinker.
It's poppin' and flippity-floppin'.
Paul Major is a fan of lesser-known records. In fact, he collects them, he catalogs them, and he shares them with people. His influence is vast, far-reaching, and he's known for putting out amazing catalogs with album descriptions that are sometimes more enjoyable to read than the record is to listen to. Feel the Music is a singular trajectory from his early days in the Midwest through his years in the New York punk scene, and headlong into his trailblazing career as a connoisseur of the weirdest records of all time. Mike and Paul spoke by phone.
Where did you grow up, and how did you get into not just records, but hard-to-find records on the fringe?
Yeah, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and towards the end of 1966, when I had just turned 12 years old, I heard for the first time fuzz guitars and sort of garage psychedelic music on the radio, because there were hits like Psychotic Reaction by the Count 5 and Talk Talk by the Music Machine and so forth. And I was oblivious to music up till then. I heard those songs and things like that, and it just seemed to me like it was coming from another world. And I really started looking for things that sounded like that first, and started noticing then, there's these other obscure bands that I haven't heard with names also getting kind of wiggy as the psychedelic stuff coming in through 66 into 67 in particular, and I started looking for just anything that might be obscure, that might sound like tripping on LSD or something like that, with fuzz guitars and spooky organs and the whole thing, this mysterious other world of crash pads and barefoot hippie girls and patterns in the walls and loud guitars. In particular, one magazine had an article once about the dangers of LSD and everything in California, and they had a picture in the magazine on one page of a guy who's sitting looking just totally sort of with a deranged look on his face, and the caption on the picture says, "This person believes that he is an orange." And so I was cracking up thinking, I'm in Kentucky, I just turned 12 years old, I'm in this sort of repressive, American suburban environment, and thinking, I want to think I'm an orange too. So it took me many years, almost 5 years later, I guess, in high school, I finally met up with a circle of friends where things like that were available, and finally got to, hear some of all these records I was accumulating up to the time under those circumstances. I never reached the orange zone, but I certainly enjoyed the music, and that's how I got started on the obscure stuff, is launched to that direction, and then as time went on, I was buying more and more records. Eventually I started expanding out and buying things that looked unusual, but were, sort of outside my zone of, garage rock and psychedelic rock and stuff, and early hard rock, and that's how my passion for the obscure started. Then with the private pressings, I started stumbling into those, and eventually I realized, it's kind of different when somebody puts out their own record than if it comes out on a big corporate record label. More interesting things sometimes happen on the privately made records, because there's nobody there to tell them no.
That's so true. I mean, I remember going to, and I worked in a small chain, but I remember going to chain record stores like Peaches or Waxy Maxie's in D.C. and Virginia, and it was always the same stuff from store to store. But when I would reach out, when I would go to different stores like Yesterday and Today and other places, or downtown D.C., I would find private press. And that, to me, like you say, it opened up another world. And not just with records, but also with movies and books. That, to me, was where it was of interest, rather than, the corporate, everything's the same, you're not going to find any surprises. The surprises were looking where others weren't.
Looking into your own neighborhood, or something like that, for local records, which I think across the country, I was starting to look for them as soon as I heard a few, and into the 80s and well into the 90s, it's like most of the local records were kind of unknown to anybody outside of that town or that area or something. And then this web of collectors, sort of people into it, sort of started like, I'll send you a heavy cyclone from St. Louis if you send me one from Seattle and stuff of these unknown things. Everybody sort of kept their information kind of secret, I guess, because there were so few people looking that people didn't want to spoil, all the good local records being thrown into the dollar bins.
It was like a Twilight Zone. It looked normal next door, but what was going on in your own town, the hopes and the dreams and the creative aspirations of certain people, you never would have known about if you hadn't run across these records.
They were the key into it. And then with me, I started trying to track all these people down that made the records too, and then that led to more. That was sort of, like you said, the door in, because then I'd be talking to somebody that made one of these records and start finding out, there's somebody a few blocks over that also made a record in their neighborhood. I got to hear that. And you start to get inside these little local scenes.
Right, that would have been totally hidden otherwise, and which is kind of a shame, because I love looking into people's creative endeavors, whether it's great, quote unquote great or not. Just the fact that they're doing it is different than most people who are just at home watching TV.
Right, just that they're driven to do it, and sometimes it'll be brilliant music, and other times it just won't be uninteresting, maybe the musical results, but still their story.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot, if you're in creative, if you want to be a writer, a songwriter, what have you, there's a lot to learn from what others might perceive to be not very good. You can learn from the brilliance and also from the not brilliance, what not to do, but also apply it to your own art and twist it in your own way that can make it more brilliant and more interesting.
It makes you an artist in the first place, and if you're doing that, whether it's in a classic sense or not, it's like you're doing the creative thing. And when something goes a bit sideways or something, that does make it their own, even if they're using the most basic influences. Sometimes when people just do things that are outrageously inappropriate in the music, something like that makes it interesting.
As an artist, you're lucky if you put out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and it hits with the public. 99% don't. So when you hear the ones that don't, it's almost not their fault. They weren't trying to appeal to the masses.
They were leaving something of value that's illuminating about the human condition, I guess, rather than just another product,
Right, exactly.
Like the corporate music and that, where it's not even music to my estimation. It's just like, product. It's just the air in the balloon, but not the shape of the balloon or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. You play it enough on radio, it's going to become a hit, whether it's good or not. I always use this example because I think it's one of the worst songs ever. Genesis, We Can't Dance. That was on the radio. Would that have been on the radio if any other group had done it? It was an absolute piece of garbage. It became a hit because it was played nonstop. We as consumers at that time, pre-internet, didn't even have a choice about what we heard and how we were to get it.
Almost a brainwashing factor. And I guess one of the great things from where I started, at least, is sort of like a hole was being blown through that in 66 and 67, where when the Beatles went psychedelic and so forth. It was like this one moment where actually the creative sort of things that would have been just not exist in radio music today, all those elements of creativity would be scrubbed out. But there was that time period there in 66, 67, and so forth, when that coincided with what was most popular, because of LSD again, really, and the psychedelic sort of way of thinking.
You were out there, actually like an archaeologist, searching out for this stuff. This was not easy to find.
Yeah, pretty much archaeology style, doing a dig, finding out, there's this barn full of records, where this guy's been hoarding records for 25 years or something, and to go in there and just dig through them all and look at everything and be in search of things that you don't know you're looking for. There's something rather than going thinking, I want to find this, I want to find that. It's more like, okay, what unknown things can I look at, and have that thrill to get them back and listen to them and see if they're good.
God, I know.
There's that sense of discovery, that digging for sort of buried treasure type thing. Where sometimes I see an album, completely unknown, homemade, obscure local album with some kind of strange cover art and a strange name, looking at it and just get the chill, sort of like, oh my God, you know, I'm peeking into this, you know, this psychedelic universe of these people, and that's part of the sociology part of it, or which again was, you know, like my compulsion to track people down just to find out what are these people like.
I think those who still search will be out there searching, and I think those who wouldn't have been interested in the 60s, 70s, and 80s still won't even go on to YouTube, take that minute to discover a new band. I think it's a type of mentality.
When I was a teenager, I'd always be looking to see what would be the late-night movie, which late night being 11:30 p.m., not even that late. What would be the movie each night? And every once in a while, I remember when I was in high school, it would be some, like a 60s exploitation, you know, movie, or, you know, just a good B horror movie, something. And we get so excited, me and my friends say, oh, this movie's on. We got to have a party and watch this movie all together. Right. We get all so excited. It would become a catalyst, you know, to get people together and stuff like that. You know, just because there's this chance to see this movie, you know, that who knows if we'll ever get a chance again. They weren't even that old of movies. It's kind of funny to think. But it'd be so rare to have access to something like that.
You put out amazing catalogs with incredibly detailed descriptions of records. I mean, reading these descriptions is as entertaining, if not more entertaining, than listening to the music. You were selling these records, or most of these records. How did you get into this? How did that start? How did the cataloging start?
That started, I guess, I was in the Midwest until 77, and then I had sort of a pre-punk type band, so I went out to Los Angeles, and I noticed, you know, more interesting records out there than I would see in Kentucky, and so I was buying some of them, and I had this sense of record collecting, but I wasn't really thinking of doing it myself. I was just buying things for myself and not thinking about dealing them. But when I came to New York then, like a year later, I saw sort of like my first bona fide record collector shops where they would have, some albums that are hard to find up on the wall for like $50 and $75 and that. So I noticed looking around saying, wow, I have that one. Wow, I have that one. I have that one. And it's sort of, light bulb went off in my head, wow, I should be buying other copies of those ones that if I see a $75 record for $1, I should be buying this. I should just be buying this. And it evolved into me selling records and then putting an ad into Goldmine, the collector magazine, with lists of things. And my stuff was mostly strange and psychedelic stuff. And then I started noticing that the same people were buying all the records, so I made a list of their addresses. And that evolved into making the catalogs. Once I had like a list of like 100 people's addresses that had bought things from me through the collector magazines, I started sending to the direct mailings. And because since most of the records in my catalogs at that time were kind of unknown, it was sort of like I had to kind of describe them. And that's sort of how I went off on the stream of consciousness, sort of trying to pick up the vibe of a record or steer it to the person that might be interested by writing something about it, even if I don't comment exactly on the music and the instrumentation and all that. I'll try to, relate it to something, like an episode of Dragnet or who knows, whatever, bring anything sort of in that maybe would give a flavor for the record. So that's kind of how it started. Just me realizing, wait a minute, I'm seeing all these things that they're selling for money now in some of these stores. I should be buying all the cheap ones and have that be my job.
Well, you were notorious for really giving good deals. You weren't ripping people off. These were very good, solid prices.
Absolutely. At the time, in certain cases, people would be sort of outraged, and I would just say, no, it's worth it, that much. And back then, I wasn't realizing even that so many more people would get into it later that would put upward pressure. I was just thinking, well, this is what I think, how good I think it is. This is what it's worth. But yeah, looking back at it now, it's sort of like so many records when I was looking through all those catalogs, and that where it's like, oh yeah. Yeah, I was selling that for $20 a copy for like several years, and now they're $200 a copy, or some of the more expensive ones. Like I think one of the most expensive ones that I actually tracked down, where I put a high price for back then. Top price was this one, the New Dawn. There's a New Dawn where I got a couple boxes of them from the band after much effort, and I was selling them for $400 back then, which was sort of like about as high as you could go for a psychedelic, or garage type albums. And that they hadn't really gone much higher, any of them. So, but now I'm thinking, okay, I had sealed ones for $400. People were complaining, but now the cheapest that record goes for is like $2,000 at the bottom. Not even for a sealed one, just for any copy. So I think I was fair with the prices, and I was sort of thinking myself as a channel for, turning other people onto music, and me getting turned on and turning on other people, and that. So it was more like the love of it than the business end, although I certainly started thinking business end about it for a long time.
In this new book, Feel the Music, The Psychedelic Worlds of Paul Major, which is a fantastic book. I mean, it's a beautiful book, the production of it, and it comes with 2 45s. Can we talk about some of the specific groups in here, some of whom I have their work?
Sure.
All right, let's talk about Rick Grossman. What do you know about him?
I don't know much about him, actually.
I feel so mellow like the month of May. Children are singing and the birds they play. Everywhere I go, it's summer day.
I think there is information on him out there now.
There is. I actually have this album. It's one of the worst or best covers out there. He's shot in the 70s, an average-looking guy with, drugstore eyeglasses, very strange 70s shirt, lying on a lawn, and the album is called Hot Romance. The music is interesting, it's okay, but the album was what I always found most interesting. I dug deeply in preparation for this interview about Rick Grossman, and it turns out he was murdered by his son.
Oh, no.
About 15, 20 years after this LP was released. So it makes the Hot Romance thematic aspect even more sad. All right, let's talk about Traffic Sound. Do you know anything about this group? What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, they started out in earlier bands in sort of like the surf British invasion era. So sort of thing where bands were imitating the Rolling Stones or whichever down there. So there was some pre-Traffic Sound bands, and they sort of came together and was sort of like, on the local scene was top guys, and got together in '68 and made their first album, which was all cover versions of heavy psychedelic songs, Cream and Hendrix and stuff, so forth, and went to Virgin, I guess, doing their own material, and I think they're probably my favorite South American band. There's some other ones that come close, but for them, they got 4 albums, and every one of them is incredible. So they were, the underground thing was so strong by, say, 1969 around the world that almost every major city in the world had bands like that, had their psychedelic bands like Traffic Sound. And I came across it just sort of by luck in a way. I guess this would be maybe 1987 or so, and I was heavy into the psychedelic and all that kind of stuff, and I knew about the British, rare obscure psychedelic acts, and then about the European ones, but not much about the rest of the world. And one day I was reading the Goldmine magazine, and I saw a guy that had an ad in there saying, records from Argentina, rare Argentina-only Madonna picture sleeves, Beatle picture sleeves. And I had this idea, wait, I'm going to write this guy and say, I don't want any of that, like, Argentine versions of other stuff. I want the bands from, from there. And I said, no, I'm interested in anything that sounds like, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, whichever, whatever, sort of saying some famous names, to indicate what I was looking for. And then he sent me a box of 50 records, and it had Traffic Sound albums were in it, and Shakers, and just Agua Turbia, all these fantastic bands from down there. So it kind of amazed me. It was like, again, like that key into another world or something, getting that first box of records from there. They seemed also exotic. I never heard of any of the bands, and yet they're as good as the ones, from the U.S. and Europe. So.
Absolutely, and sort of underrated. Like you mentioned Aqua Turbia, and then you write about one of their songs, Evolve, which you say is amazing, and it is amazing.
Yeah,
the whole album is fantastic.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there were a few people around the world outside of Peru and Chile and places like that were turned on those records way back, but very few. To the collecting world at large, in the late 80s when the South American ones started getting attention, it was like, they were utterly unknown at that time. It was like they may as well have been, records manufactured in another solar system or something. They were so unknown and remote. They seemed so exotic.
Right, and that only affected me listening to this stuff. It felt like I was making a pre-internet connection with another world.
Mm-hmm. It's speaking for what people's lives were like at that time. Yeah.
Now, one of the best known of these bands, of course, is the Shags. That seems to be the band most people know about in this category. But there are some that became bigger within this world. Gary Wilson and Bob Trimble for two.
Mm-hmm. When that album came out, it sort of came out during the flood of punk, new wave, experimental, when the sort of private pressing thing was revitalized, and actually really does have a lot to do with the explosion of punk and that. So the Gary Wilson album, there were distributions coming up for these small labels and private pressings and stuff like that, and there were the collectors looking as well. And the Gary Wilson was in the bins at that time, so it kind of made a presence because his music's so unusual and personalized and experimental. It leaked over into sort of what I call sort of my circles, more of that far out psychedelic and homemade and strange.
She's so real. She's so real. She's so real. Oh, she's so real.
I remember with Bob Trimble, it was sort of a different case where he was unknown, where the Gary Wilson actually, some copies got around the Bob Trimble until I found that copy in the early 80s when it was only a few years old up in New Hampshire. It seemed like he hadn't gone anywhere.
Life support system just burst into flames. Picture is fading.
I don't think anybody ever talked to anybody that knew about him, before that time, even local people. So I think in both cases, they're people that are still in a world then you could be somewhat isolated or something for information and so forth. So I think their music's more pure because obviously they have their influences and things they're listening to, but they still have their pure head. It isn't like completely filled with all the information and so forth, where they could still sort of be untainted by the world, and not just the record labels, but just the world at large.
Untainted by the world, yeah. How often does that happen anymore, boy?
Yeah. Is it possible?
Is it possible? I don't know if it is. I really don't. I mean, I see it in my daughter's eyes. She's a lot more worldly than I was at that age, or even twice her age.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's good.
I can't imagine it.
I can't either. You just wonder what's coming up. Let's talk about another album I love. Not sure how to pronounce the last name. Is it Margot Gurian or Gurian?
Oh yeah, Gurian.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's her
Margot
background?
Gurian, yeah.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she was actually was sort of doing demos and writing songs. I guess sort of trying to sort of make it as a singer-songwriter. And I remember one of the groups that did her songs with that group Spanking Our Gang that had a few hits, and one of her songs they recorded, and a few other people recorded them, and then just got a contract to do a one-off album, and that came out on Bell Records.
Sunday morning, sunshine from your eyes, sleepy face, smiling into mine. Sunday morning.
Now, Bell put out Partridge Family. They put out a lot of very, very popular stuff.
They had some hits. I'm sure the Partridge Family were paying the bills, though, I guess. But they did throw out a number of obscure records, and that one is one of the most interesting ones to me, because even back in the day, you never saw it.
I mean, does it just come down to marketing? Does it come down to like what the marketing staff within a label feels like they should be pushing for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think it comes down to that. And did they make like a couple thousand of them, or only a couple hundred, or something? Sometimes, like in the case of that record, it's easier to find a copy that says it's a promo copy than a normal one. So it may have been almost like almost non-existent, except for the copies they sent out to the radio stations that didn't play it. But
well, that's the thing too. I mean, you hear about these people who are saying the music industry stinks now, which is true monetarily, but at the same time, you can potentially reach as many people as any other band through the internet. I mean, Margot at that time could not have done that.
No, exactly. If one of those radio stations didn't start playing one of her songs, and then somehow people would catch on to it and listen to it and become a hit, it's gone. There was no way for an artist to be heard except for radio. Radio had the absolute stranglehold on that, all the way up, I guess, till the internet, really, in a way.
Now, another group that I love, and I own the album, The Lynx.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way.
You say that the only people that gave them a run for their money doing Creedence Clearwater covers would be the High Hopes, H-I-H-O-P-E-S album of Creedence covers, the High Hopes being a band from the School for the Mentally Retarded in California.
Right.
That's a good review.
Yeah, and it's a joyous record, too. I mean, it just can't help but make you happy hearing kids just, rocking out on Creedence, with enthusiasm. I guess a lot of the interest there does have to do with it, that they do several Creedence Clearwater songs in that context. So it sort of, takes music coming from a totally as uncommercial an angle as possible.
Well, that's a good point, because you have these albums released of those who are mentally challenged, and I guess it can be made fun of from some factors, but the fact is they're doing it for pure joy, and there's no other reason. They're not doing it to be famous, to make money. It's just from a deep goodness within themselves that they want to produce.
Yeah, and it's contagious then, the enthusiasm and the spirit of it is so contagious. It's just life-affirming to hear it. And it has kind of a power to it that's not, like a lot of things that are unusual or come from unusual angles like that, people will tend to sort of look at as kitsch, or sort of, oh, it's so bad, it's good, that kind of, sort of like you're laughing at it somewhat in some way. And this isn't like that at all. It's like the spirit of humanity is coming through there, and there's a real power there, and it's sort of blows out of the water those sort of more superficial approaches to listening to things where you think, oh, isn't isn't that funny? Isn't that, look at the weirdo, or whatever. It humanizes it so strongly that I guess that really goes to sort of the core of the whole appeal of real people and the homemade music and all that, and the people that that never got anywhere with it, but they left their record there, and now, thanks to the upside of the internet, at least is that, these things are getting heard and anybody in the world can hear them. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, there's more humanity in one of these songs than there would be in the entire life of someone like Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about Feel the Music, The Psychedelic Worlds of Paul Major. Fantastic book. It's available through anthology editions. This is a major product. I mean, this must have taken years to put together.
Yeah, it started out some years ago when Johann Kugelberg, who is a long-time friend of mine and had been getting my catalogs all the way back in the 80s, so he had a bunch of them, and he said he had the idea, we should issue an edition reproducing all the catalogs, or at least all the ones that we can locate a copy of, and it sort of went to that for a while, but the realization came that it would be 1.5 million words if they were all reproduced. So that's like, it can't be a 2,000-page book or something. So it evolved into having some representative bits of catalogs in there and pictures of all the ones that we could find, but also expand out into a little more background about my life and my discovering the music and so forth. And I think they did a fantastic job. It was a situation where I sort of wanted to stay away from choosing, or thinking about it too much, because it was like, if I had to think about myself, what to put in the book, I'd be making too many decisions, and I'd be saying, leave that out, put that in and out. So it's sort of like I gave them a bunch of stuff, and they put it together really, like, from the outside, and I didn't really see it until it was done, basically, or nearly done, as to what they included.
Well, if someone's out there listening, you're also a member of a great band called Endless Boogie, which I recommend highly. If someone out there is listening and wants to get in touch with you or see more of your history or your work, how would they go about doing that?
You could get in touch with me through Anthology, or just, I have a Facebook page, but I don't look at it too often. But I will answer all messages that go there.
You've been doing amazing work for so long, and for all the right reasons. So for that alone, I thank you.
Oh, thanks. That makes me feel good, because it's absolutely true. I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I do feel good that this sort of thing sort of happened, and the book came out, and all these things happened. I feel really good because all these people whose music that I admired, that I was sometimes the first person to ever give them feedback that, you did something really good here, and blow their minds by saying, maybe only a few dozen people ever heard your record when it came out, your family and your friends and that. But now, look on YouTube, 120,000 people have listened to your song, and they'll freak out when I tell them that. It's just like, so that's the thing that makes me the happiest, is that all these people's obscure music is now, being preserved, and people are interested in it, so it'll become a part of the human record.
Damn right. All right, well, keep up the great work, my friend, and I'll talk with you down the road.
That's it for this episode of Doing It with Mike Sachs. Thanks to Paul Major for talking with Mike. Thanks to you for listening. Our theme music is by Sam Peach, and you can find Mike on Twitter at Michael B. Sachs. You can find me on Twitter at Rob K. Schulte. R-O-B, the letter K, S-C-H-U-L-T-E. So until next time, keep your feet on the ground and keep doing it.